Listen, guys, if we're complaining, imagine what the other countries around the world are actually complaining about, okay? If you start importing products that are so cheap that it's not even giving a chance to anyone in your specific country to basically be able to manufacture these things because they will never be this cost, all right? They can never be that cost. What are you expecting here? Of course, other countries around the world are also experiencing similar things that we literally are experiencing due to being undercut consistently for the last 40, 50 years, guys. All right. That's the reality of our situation. It definitely ramped up in the 90s here. Right. So, yeah, now the EU is basically attempting to get into some type of like tariff kerfuffle, let's say, with China. Of course, mandatory. And I'm sure other countries are going to start following suit here, guys. Right. But all right, let's go and jump into this video immediately. This is a suggestion via Discord.
The sky has collapsed for cross-border trade. The European market is also going to cancel the tax exemption policy for parcels under 150 euros and plans to charge a handling fee for every single parcel. This means that prices at the front end of the European market will definitely rise. This policy mainly targets cross-border platforms like Temu, Shein, and Amazon, as there are concerns about counterfeit and substandard products entering the European market.
Europe's recent move is mainly due to the overwhelming number of small parcels being sent from China. In 2024, over 4.6 billion small parcels entered Europe,
4.6
with
billion.
91% coming from China. That means that every second, 145 Chinese parcels enter Europe, all of which benefit from tax exemptions. France, in particular, has been overwhelmed by the low-priced parcels from Chinese e-commerce platforms. This situation has only worsened in 2025, with the number of parcels doubling compared to 2023 and quadrupling compared to 2022. The influx of Chinese goods has become so massive that many French media outlets are calling it an invasion.
家人们听说了吗？
Did you hear? Recently, France's foreign trade orders have skyrocketed by 125%. The European market has become the new hotspot. Our foreign trade sector has been buzzing, with French orders growing exponentially. Europe has turned into the top market. The host explains the European market exploded because of U.S. tariff policies.
Absolutely.
In April, the U.S. imposed reciprocal tariffs, and in May, it ended the tax exemption for small parcels. As a result, business quickly turned to Europe to avoid risks. Platforms like Temu and Shein have sharply reduced their digital advertising spending in the U.S., shifting their resources to Europe and Brazil. According to Sensor Tower data, compared to other European countries, France and the U.K. saw the largest growth in ad spending.
Guys, I mean, come on, listen. How many people are going to want to deal with this consistently? I mean, obviously, the people themselves are absolutely benefiting to a certain extent until it comes down to them having to try to find a job that manufactures or creates something, guys, right? This is absolutely obliterating countries around the world's workforce. The reality. Like, you're taking a temporary pleasure of like a dopamine hit, basically, of getting something super cheap in a sale, it's a deal, right? But understand what's happening to your actual country. I think we all need to kind of come together as a planet and basically say, you know what, hey guys, listen, no one in the world can keep up with what you guys are basically doing, and it's not really conducive to our own countries to consistently allow you to import basically tax-free into our nation and us not get actually anything from you destroying our workforce. You understand what I'm saying here, guys?
Shein increased its ad spending in both France and the UK by 35%, while Temu raised theirs by 40% in France and 20% in the UK. Compared to the same time last year, Temu's ad spending in France has increased by 115%, and in the UK by 20%. This advertising push has already shown results. Shein's app downloads in the UK increased by 25% per month, and Temu's downloads more than doubled. Although the increase in downloads is noticeable, the growth in daily active users is limited. Shein saw a 5% increase, while Temu grew by 10%. In light of these developments, the French government has taken action to curb the flood of parcels. On April 25th, the French Minister of Finance announced specific measures to stop Chinese e-commerce parcels flooding the European market. These measures aim to reduce the influx of small Chinese parcels. Finance Minister Eric Lombard pointed to millions of parcels from Chinese e-commerce platforms, particularly from fast fashion leader Shein, cross-border platform Temu, and Alibaba. These parcels not only compete with French merchants, but also create an ecological disorder, with some products even failing to meet European standards. Lombard added that these measures are meant to respond to the influx of goods and protect consumer safety while addressing the distorted competition local businesses are facing. When asked if the government was considering unilaterally removing the tariff exemption for parcels under €150, the Ministry of Finance said they are studying the legal feasibility of such a move. On April 29th, French Public Accounts Minister Amélie de Montchalin and Finance Minister Eric Lombard jointly announced that France would propose to the EU a handling fee for all small parcels under €150 originating from Chinese e-commerce platforms. This fee will not be passed on to consumers, but will be borne by importers or platforms.
Yeah, that makes sense for you guys right now, right? But in all actuality, it will in fact be passed on to the consumers. It just means that now everything is going to cost more if they have to spend more, guys. But either
The
way,
funds raised will strengthen customs monitoring and product safety checks. The French SME Federation welcomed this and urged that the situation be treated as an emergency to increase regulatory enforcement. The French E-commerce Association called for immediate action to stop the unfair advantage and dumping practices of Asian platforms.
yeah.
Those who
It's
support
straight
restricting
dumping.
Chinese low-cost imports say that European businesses must comply with social, environmental, and safety standards, while
Absolutely.
Chinese imports are almost unregulated. They call on the EU to establish reciprocal rules and sanction proper practices like selling at a loss. The EU plans to completely end the tax exemption for parcels under €150 by 2028. France hopes to implement handling fees as an interim measure, negotiating with countries like Germany and the Netherlands, and it aims to have this policy unified across the EU by 2026. The French government plans to trial a new fee system from 2026 to 2028, paving the way for future EU tariff reforms and intensifying efforts to combat counterfeit and substandard goods. France states that the purpose of the system is to ensure consumer safety, maintain market fairness, and protect national financial interests. In April, the European Commission released its annual Safety Gate report, which highlighted China as the largest source of dangerous products in the European consumer market.
Yeah, that's going to be coming from like a lot of the manufacturers and factories specifically that are selling like the penny stuff. If that makes any sense here. Like what a lot of people do across the planet, let's say, is that what they do is they go to China and then they purchase the penny stuff, the stuff that literally costs nothing more than like 10, 15 cents, so they can sell for, I don't know, $30, $40, that type of thing. And then when you buy it, you realize that it's absolute trash. But keep this in mind here, guys, the majority of the things that you're basically using on a daily basis are coming from China. They probably experience some type of like origin laundering scenario where China sent things at like, 45% completed into a brand new country. And then within that country, they built it and then stamped their logo onto it, their country logo, basically. So just understand China absolutely does make amazing products. It's just that the people, the absolute predatory individuals around this world, they go there specifically buy the cheapest of the cheapest to sell it for as big of a profit as they possibly can. And then now your experience with Chinese made goods are basically filth, right? So what you're hearing right now seems to be kind of falling into that very like specific scenario.
The second largest source was the European Economic Area, which includes all EU countries. In cases involving cosmetics, Italy accounted for 16%, ranking second to China. In 2023, China accounted for 37%, increasing to 40% in 2024. The report pointed out that since 2006, the European Commission has been collaborating with China's product safety regulatory authorities, with China regularly reporting the handling of dangerous products flagged by the EU. In September 2023, the EU and China signed a joint action plan, agreeing to report on dangerous products flagged from online shopping. Concerned about the influx of cheap goods bypassing regulations, the EU announced the formation of an import monitoring team to address the issue.
Yeah, that's
the
mandatory.
team, based at the EU Commission's headquarters in Brussels, aims to closely monitor changes in global product flows and assess whether the new tariffs imposed by President Trump on China are reshaping trade patterns. Reinhard Bütikofer, a China expert and former European parliamentarian, said that China is heavily reliant on exports to absorb its industrial overcapacity. With the U.S. market closed, these goods are inevitably flowing to other regions, with Europe being the top destination.
Right, it's
As a
flooding
result,
them.
China may flood Europe with excess production.
Yeah, and this is that dumping thing that they were talking about earlier, because this is exactly what they're trying to do. The problem is that they've absolutely overproduced nearly everything. It's the reason why I kind of regularly say in the United States of America, we're not really going to feel any of this until our stocks dry up. Because, guys, we've been purchasing so much from China for so long that we have stockpiles of things. So now imagine if they're used to making all of these things and now they have all of this product sitting, they need to dump this somewhere. And what makes most sense in the world? Europe, Australia, Oceania, right? Like it makes the most sense in the world, and I understand why they're doing it here, guys, right? They're following the money.
Dragging down local economies into a vicious cycle of price competition.
Yeah.
If this trend continues, Germany's economy could be hit hardest. Market analysts note that in sectors like photovoltaics, where Germany no longer has a significant industry, the impact may be manageable. However, in key sectors like chemicals and mechanical manufacturing, the influx of cheap goods could pose a severe threat, even jeopardizing the survival of some companies. To prevent such a situation, the European Commission may introduce targeted restrictions. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has explicitly stated that the EU must guard against the indirect impacts of trade diversion. Chinese bloggers have analyzed that these measures in Europe are a fatal blow to cross-border e-commerce.
It is.
With the U.S. having just canceled the tax exemption for small parcels, Chinese cross-border e-commerce platforms like TK, Temu, and Smartone halted their U.S. operations during the May Day holiday. A large portion of cross-border sellers likely spent the holiday in anxiety. The news regarding Europe has now become a reality, which will have a devastating impact on Chinese cross-border brands. With no markets left in Europe and the US, cross-border e-commerce is essentially finished. Some may point to Southeast Asia and South America as potential markets, but they cannot accommodate China's massive market, especially as Southeast Asia has already become saturated.
Yeah, no, I mean, it would sound really good, but I mean, you're gonna again, you have to chase the money, and they're definitely choosing to dump pretty hard, let's say, into countries that have copious amounts of money. I'm definitely not saying that there are not other countries in Southeast Asia specifically that have copious amounts of money. Singapore being one of them, but I can only imagine that their markets are completely saturated, fully, bro. Right? What more can they actually take? They can't. You need a bigger market, and that's why they're choosing to basically dump in Europe, guys. Canada.
Therefore, the future of cross-border e-commerce is uncertain. After many years of rapid growth, the industry has now entered a period of adjustment. The approach to overseas expansion may need to change. It will likely require businesses to truly invest in local markets, providing value to those regions. This year, the cross-border e-commerce and foreign trade environments are the same. Both are rapidly entering a phase of consolidation. Sheng Mingshi, a researcher at the Taiwan National Defense Security Research Institute, told foreign media that the U.S. is the primary market for Chinese products. Right. After the U.S. imposed 90%. Tariffs, China has been looking for alternative markets, and Southeast Asia is unlikely to be a viable option. The most mature and largest market available now is the European Union. If the EU and President Trump can reach an acceptable tariff agreement, the EU should lean towards the U.S. and be willing to clash with China rather than accept Chinese products. In the triangular game between the US, EU, and China, if the US-China trade war escalates, the EU will likely be the winner. The products that China exports to the EU are mostly daily necessities or consumer goods, and these can be replaced by similar products from other countries. Therefore, the EU will not be greatly affected. Taiwanese economist Wu Jialong stated that the European market cannot absorb China's surplus products. China's economic strategy is fundamentally flawed, and it is bound to lead to resistance.
Oh, yeah.
From the beginning, China's economic strategy was to overinvest, leading to overcapacity, followed by price competition and dumping products abroad, which naturally triggered the rise of protectionism and trade friction with other countries.
Absolutely.
EU-China relations are already not as strong as before. The EU-China Comprehensive Investment Agreement was overwhelmingly frozen by the European Parliament in 2021. Shen Mingshi explained that the EU will not accept Chinese products with national capital subsidies or allow China to shift its dumping practices to the EU while the investment agreement remains frozen. Furthermore, the EU will not resume the agreement due to U.S. tariffs. On the other hand, even if the EU is unwilling to accept China's surplus products, Sheng Mingshi believes that China does not dare to actively worsen its relationship with the EU, as it doesn't want to offend both the EU and the U.S. at the same time. The US announced in April that it would impose punitive tariffs of up to 145% on certain Chinese products. And from May 2nd, it canceled the tax exemption for online shopping parcels from China and Hong Kong valued under $800.
Yeah, guys, I'm definitely in the camp of still saying that the tariff should be permanent and much higher. Like, if I was in office specifically, I would have said probably 400 to a 1,000%. This would have legitimately forced them to their knees in this context here. Stop doing what you are doing, period. And what happens is that Xi Jinping will only basically remain in power as long as his people, for the most part, are working. If you put a 400% tariff onto all of their goods, guess what happens, guys? All right. Obviously, Americans stop purchasing large scale everything because now other people in other countries are going to have the ability to compete. Because think about it, you're selling something for $1, bro. You're selling something for $2. That product in the United States of America most likely is $50. Okay, we cannot keep up. So a 400% tariff absolutely would have made things at least more reasonable and attainable. Let's say for American manufacturers to basically pay Americans to do these jobs, and we could maintain a civil relationship in terms of trade here, guys. 1,000% would have completely obliterated China, though. So maybe not. Let's not do that specifically. That could have easily sparked, let's say, WW3, one of the precursors to WW2. At least, right? So let's not do that specifically. But a 400% would have absolutely been adequate. Okay, I'm sorry, it would have been adequate, guys. But either way, we're here. Let's continue.
These parcels now face tariffs as high as 120%. The latest news on May 12th is that the US and China have reached a trade agreement. Both sides have agreed to significantly reduce tariffs within 90 days. The US tariffs will drop from 145% to 30%,
Right.
and Chinese tariffs will decrease from 125% to 10%, with a mechanism for continuous negotiations.
Yeah, bro, they could have definitely. We're gonna go ahead and stop this video here. The thing is, guys, China could have absolutely kept the tariffs at 125, and it still would not have meant much. At most, what they do is they import soybeans. Now, in fact, it would have definitely affected soybean farmers specifically. But soybeans, Hollywood, movies, and things like that, guys. I mean, their tariffs are not going to affect the full-blown economy, our economy. It won't. Like, you could have kept it, bro. It's fine. You don't buy anything from us. You guys make everything, right? The reality of that situation. Now, if they were to start actually purchasing things from us, which would not make sense for them because they don't need anything. I mean, semiconductors, right? I mean, that's important, obviously. They import these. And some chips and things like that, guys, right? But not enough. They don't import enough for it to be meaningful to the country, let's say. But now us putting a tariff on them, absolutely. And the 30% also includes, I'm guessing, the tariff that was on them since 2018, guys. Okay. But we're here for this, guys. Let's go. We're going to keep following this story. I do think that other countries definitely need to kind of band together and make it so China specifically cannot continue to undercut the laborers in these countries. No one can compete, guys. Like there's no competition. Stop allowing the products to, through the border unless you're going to massively hit them with tariffs, right? That's just a mandatory thing, you guys. You have to tariff China, okay? Because again, no one can compete. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. You're allowing another country to wreck your country. You're making it so your country now is 100% reliant, let's say, specifically on China. Why would you do that? China legitimately is our adversary. Okay, and don't think I'm like some anti-China hawk here, guys. I've been to China multiple times. I mean, it's a beautiful country. You get what I'm saying here? I like the cities. Their cities are super futuristic, and guys, everything is cheap there, right? Literally. I mean, and I mean that, right? Because again, it's China, right? So like, bro. I just do not like the concept of another country, another sovereign nation, basically dumping products into another sovereign nation, basically making it so the people from said nation have no ability to actually compete with to compete with it, right? I mean, think about this here. The average laborer specifically in a Chinese factory is making from 1,000 to 2,000 yuan. That's about 140 to $280 roughly. Quick math, right? That's about that. They're making that monthly. You cannot pay that to anyone here. You can't. They're not coming to work, bro. Right? That's not the reality here. Like that's like a daily wage or like a 2-day wage for people. Guys, that's not a thing. You can't That's a month out there, bro. Right? But I mean, it helps when you have the ability to basically alter and modify your currency at any whim, right? It helps, I guess. But either way, listen, let me know in the comments what you guys think. I'm here for the conversation, guys. Absolutely. You guys all have an absolutely amazing day. Enjoy your day. Thoroughly.